All rise. City of Walla Walla versus Derek Robinson.
You may be seated.
May it please the court. Judge, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we are here today to try the defendant and put him away in prison for his heinous crimes of recklessness and blatant disregard for laws and safety. I will represent the city of Walla Walla in this case. The defendant is guilty of manslaughter. He is guilty of illegally possessing a firearm he found in the street. Astoundingly, the defendant brought his weapon to school and put his fellow classmates and friends in extreme danger. The defendant is also guilty of vandalism as he carelessly destroyed a passenger car on a southbound D train. No matter what the defense presents to you today, we cannot allow this menace to escape charges. He himself has already confessed to police investigators that he indeed did have the gun on school property. He's also admitted to bringing that same .38 caliber pistol to the nearby train tracks, where a bullet from his gun killed Mary Hatta, an innocent woman. The defendant confessed to all this right to police investigators. Mary Hatta was not only just an innocent woman, she was an amazing asset to our community with a loving husband and 2 young boys. Without Mary, there would be no one to read to the orphans after church, or anybody to feed the men and women at the homeless shelter. For robbing us of such an amazing woman, the defendant needs to get what he deserves. Today we have prepared for you a display of hard evidence, eyewitness testimony, and witness accounts that prove beyond a shadow of any doubt the defendant is guilty. Uphold your civil duty and deliver the appropriate punishment that is reckless and irresponsible illness.
May it please the court. May. My name is Andrew Harvey, and I'm here today to defend Derek Robinson. Derek is a good kid. He's a 16-year-old at Walla Walla High School. He gets straight A's, he has lots of friends. Derek has a good life. Today, the prosecution is attempting to put Derek in jail for a long time for something he didn't do. They claim that on April 1st, while shooting a gun he illegally obtained, Derek struck a woman in the head with a bullet and killed her. That is flat out not true. Today, the defense is going to bring in a coroner, Dr. Anthony Davis, to prove to you that Derek did not die of a bullet shot to the head, but of a heart attack. Derek is a good kid. He simply made a mistake. It would be a gross injustice to put him in jail, and you know it. You should not put him in jail because he is a good kid. Thank you.
Prosecution calls their first witness.
Prosecution call it first witness.
May it please the court? The prosecution would like to present Dr. Anthony.
Objection.
Judge? On what grounds?
On grounds.
Well, Ms. Clerman said that on the sheet for witnesses that we didn't have if they're a doctor or not, and she made us redo it. They didn't have that.
They
They
have
had a
him on
doctor.
their witness list.
Your call, Judge.
I didn't see the witness list.
What?
I can assure you.
They
Okay.
said that there was a husband and a hobo. So I'm pretty sure that the hobo is not a doctor.
Your call, Judge. Do you allow the witness or not?
Sustained.
Okay, so the witness may not testify. Okay, call your next witness. Quiet in the court. Call your next witness.
May it please the court?
Amen.
The prosecution would like to call up Donnie Trump. Stand.
Bailiff, please swear in the witness.
I do.
Please say your name for the record.
My name is Donnie Trump.
And where do you live, Donnie Trump?
Well, I live in a creek down by the, or not in a creek, but I have a camp down by the creek next to the railroad.
Are you currently employed?
My father recently died and he owned
Objection.
the,
Relevance.
I'm getting there.
anyway, so I recently inherited the ownership of the D train, which is a passenger train that Mrs. Hatter was on when she was shot.
And why do you live by the creek if you own such a profitable business?
Well, I was homeless until I owned this. I still am homeless. It kind of like, it soothes me to be by the creek and just kind of be the stars and everything.
Where were you around 4:30 the night of Miss Hattie's death?
Well, around then I was in my camp, watching the D train go by. It was very relaxing, very peaceful evening. Then I heard gunshots, amazingly.
So what did you do?
Well, I went to go investigate, and I saw two kids. They were shooting tin cans by the railroad. Couldn't believe it. They were just, I mean, I couldn't imagine what idiot would possibly think of doing that.
So you just sat and watched them?
Yeah, well, I thought I recognized one of the kids, so I kind of went closer to see who it was.
Why did you think you recognized them?
Well, I thought it was Derek Robinson, so when I got closer, I found out that it was, and I knew him because his parents were a friend of mine, or they were friends of mine, and so I've been visiting to their house before, so I could recognize them.
So what did you do after you found out that it was the defendant shooting the train?
Well, I went to go phone the police to make sure, well, call them to come and apprehend these kids. Then I went back to keep watching them, make sure that they didn't do anything else that was completely stupid before the police got there.
So what did you do before the police arrived?
What did I do? Well, as I said, I just went up to them, sat and watched.
Did you go on board the D train?
Well, let's see. I saw them. Well, what happened was they were still shooting tin cans as I was watching, and one of those bullets went and actually hit the train and shattered the glass. And then the two kids ran away, and his friend, I didn't recognize his friend, but I did recognize Derek. He yelled to him, "Derek, I told you this was a bad idea." So I went on board the D train saying how I just inherited it and owned it to check out what the damages were to it.
Was the damage truly extensive?
It was extremely extensive, actually. It was bad before I even got to where Mrs. Hatter was shot. There was blood running down the aisle. It was staining the carpet that was imported from India to be in the passenger train. And so it's very expensive. And so when I actually got to the seat where Mrs. Hatter was, her body was lying in a pool of blood on the floor. It was obvious that she took a bullet wound to the head.
And you're sure it was the defendant's gun that made that bullet?
I am absolutely positive. I saw it come from his gun. It shattered the window of the train. And we had to gut the whole train, redo the body so it still maintained structural integrity when we replaced the window. All in all, it was about $120,000 to fix all these damages.
Right, expensive.
It is.
Your witness?
May it please the court. So let me get this straight. You saw him shoot the train.
Yes.
How could you see a bullet leave the gun and enter the train when you can't even see a bullet when it's shot?
Well, I saw him pointing the gun, was at the train, heard the noise of the gun going off, and saw the window shatter.
So your exact words were, "I saw the bullet hit the window."
Well, you know what I mean. I
So-
figured it's pretty.
Also,
Pretty
you said
obvious.
you entered the train.
I did enter the train.
How could you enter the train when it's moving?
Well, it was stopped.
When it didn't stop.
It did stop. It stopped. Well, if a bullet enters a train and kills somebody, of course the train would stop.
How would the conductor hear the bullet or the gunshot?
Got one of those, in the train, there is an emergency stop that anyone can pull.
Are you aware of how long it takes a train to stop?
Objection.
Underwear hands.
Relevancy.
You want to object to or objection?
No.
Okay.
So, are you aware of how long it takes a train to stop?
I am aware.
Well, can you please answer me? How long does it take a train to stop?
Not too long. But I could reach it after it stopped.
But you didn't.
I did. I did enter the train. I did see it.
So,
I'm not sure that the counsel can testify. It's
Is the witness objecting?
So is it true that most homeless are either druggies, alcoholics, mentally unstable, hallucinative? That's what
Obsessive.
Oh, geez.
Sustained.
I like the arc on my side. Well,
Proceed, go ahead and proceed.
Okay, so I'm objecting, or not objecting, it's a fair objection. Talking about how these could be hallucinative and not even know what's happening.
Why would
No more questions.
Prosecution, are there any more witnesses to call?
No.
Defense?
Sorry.
Did you just answer for the prosecution? Thank you.
Yeah.
Prosecution.
We would like to argue the case for calling Theo Hatta the same. Are we allowed?
I was.
I think she,
I made a
misnamed.
mistake with the name. And he's not.
Okay, so the prosecution calls who?
Theo Hatta to the stand.
Objection. So it's now two different people.
Mr. Warnett, I think you should allow this so the person can testify.
I think Mr. Ornette is the judge.
Mr. Harvey. Mr. Harvey.
I'm sorry.
Thank
Like
you.
no, like no.
You may come to stand.
Mr. Judge Warnett, one of the things you can do is strike his testimony after we listen to it and instruct the jury that it's not relevant to this situation or something of that sort when you're giving your jury instructions. If you feel that that's necessary, you can do that, and you can tell them to disregard the testimony of this witness, okay? So weigh into evidence what they're saying and then make that decision when you're doing your jury instructions.
Please raise your hand. Raise your hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do.
Did you have any health problems at the time that could have affected your judgment after Mary's death?
I did not. Neither of us were sick. We had perfectly healthy bloodlines, and we were in physical top condition.
Does this murder have a traumatic effect on your life?
It's pretty huge.
Objection. Relevance.
It's massive. Now, Larry has no one to come home to. I'm the only one. That means I'm the one working parent.
Where were you compared to your wife, Mary Hatta, when she was shot?
I was sitting in the seat next to her.
How far away from the nearest hospital when your wife was shot?
I can't give an exact distance, but it was a long ways. Our city does not have a hospital, so it's a while to the next visit.
When the incident first occurred, what did you see?
I saw the window shatter, which kind of startled me, and then I realized Mary kind of was shocked and then fell over, and there was blood, and I saw it was coming from her head, and I yelled, somebody said, call 911, and then the train started stopping, somebody pulled the emergency brake.
So where exactly was Mary pronounced dead?
At the hospital, but it was kind of obvious. I took her pulse there, and she had none.
Was there any other viable way that Mary could have died otherwise besides being shot?
No.
Was there anything suspicious nearby before the bullet was shot at Mary?
Not suspicious, but there were people, 2 boys, and then another man off to the side who looked like he was watching the boys.
Why were you originally on this trip?
Mary and I were going to New York to the New York hospital to visit Larry, who was wounded in Iraq. He's my son.
Was there damage on the train after the bullet was shot at your wife?
Yeah, there was a lot. There was a window. It was shattered. There was blood all over the carpet. A lot of blood. It must have soaked through.
How long had you been married to Mary?
8 years this last year.
May it please the court. Could you describe the scene one more time for the jury?
I was sitting in the seat next to Mary. We were having a conversation, and the window shattered. It kind of startled both of us. She fell over onto my lap, and there was blood oozing everywhere, and there was a hole in her head where the blood was coming from.
So you were startled after the bullet went through the window and before it hit her in the head and back. You both were startled.
No, I was startled.
Oh,
It-
not both, just you.
Yes,
So you made a mistake when you said both of you.
I did not say both of us.
So in your train ride from Portland to United City to visit your son Larry, who's wounded in Iraq, did you leave the car at all?
Not before that, no.
I'm not familiar with train rides, but that's a pretty long train ride. You're saying you didn't have to go to the bathroom once, you didn't stand up to stretch your legs, nothing.
I did not leave the car. I stood up maybe once or twice, but I did not leave the car. We weren't that far from Portland.
So you weren't far from Portland. You were going to New York City from Portland.
Yes,
No bathroom breaks?
not before the death.
Objection? Relevant?
We're getting there.
Okay.
Pretty impressive ladder, sir. So, the defense brought in some evidence. It's a $3.5 million life insurance that Mr. Haddon claimed on his wife's accidental death. $3.5 million is a lot of money. It gives many people reasons to lie about what they did or didn't do. So you did not leave the car at all during your training?
No.
Defense rests.
Caleb?
Am I supposed to give the evidence to the judge to see?
That would be good. And then it should be passed around the jury. Prosecution rests. Unwillingly, perhaps? Defense, call your first witness.
May it please the court. The defense would like to call Derek Robinson. Please state your name for the record.
Derek Robinson.
So, you found a .38 caliber gun?
Yeah.
Took it to school?
Mhm.
And afterwards, you and your friend went down the train tracks, started shooting Clinton.
Sure.
Around what time were you shooting Clinton?
4:30 or 45.
And did you notice a train go by?
Yeah, no.
Was that around the same time?
Yeah.
Did you notice anything strange happen while you were shooting?
Well, there was a loud sound, after I shot a couple of bullets, but I just thought that might have been maybe a ricochet.
And then you left?
Yeah.
And this was when?
4:30, 45.
Prosecution, would you like to cross-examine?
Yes.
Your witness.
So, when did you find this gun?
It was before I went to school that day. I don't know.
So you took it to school and were watching it to your fellow classmates?
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
So were you aware that the gun might have gone off and possibly injured one of your fellow students?
I put the safety on.
Okay. So you have a lot of experience with guns then?
Not really, but with airsoft guns, yeah. So I know there's a safety on it.
So do you know the rules about firing a gun near a train track then?
No, I didn't.
So did you see any people watching you while you were firing your gun?
Yeah, my friend.
Okay.
What? Defense, call your next witness.
We would like to bring Anthony Davis in stand. Dr. Anthony Davis.
You just want to tell the truth and the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
So, what is your occupation?
Coroner.
How long have you been a coroner?
This will be my 8th year.
Okay, so what I can see, you have a clean record.
Yep, no blemishes.
What, do you know why the police didn't come to you for a record of your autopsy?
Well, they saw the bullet and they assumed that the cause of death was gunshot wound.
So why did you do an autopsy?
It's just standard procedure.
So, did you give the report to the police?
Of course, I submitted my report, but they didn't listen.
What was the real cause of death?
Mary Hatta died of heart failure at about 2 p.m.
How accurate is this time?
within 15 minutes.
So, the bullet found in Mary Hatta's head had nothing to do with her death?
Correct. Well, it was postmortem.
No more questions. You know what it is.
Please report. You said Mary died from heart failure?
Correct.
Have you ever diagnosed any of the Hatta family before?
No.
Well, we have a letter sent in by a member of the Hatta
Objection.
family.
Yeah, that evidence is thrown out.
Did you have somebody double check your awesome recent?
I don't know.
Was it standard procedure to have somebody double check?
Nope.
Defense, do you have a final witness?
Goodbye.
Like to call,
What is your occupation?
I'm away on the train.
Were you working here the day Mary Hatta died? Did anything other people in the happen that day?
Prosecution, would you like to cross-examine?
Prosecution, yes.
Closing statements?
Defense gets to read the record then.
Who would like to call?
Instead, Eric, or Thomas, excuse me.
Did you interact with Mary Hatta at all?
Yeah, I accidentally bumped into her in the hall.
What did you do then?
I talked to her a little bit and she seemed nice.
Did anything else happen after that?
Yeah, she came on to me pretty hard. We had an affair.
Quiet in the court.
Section. Relevancy. Relevancy. And were you rape?
No, she collapsed over the call.
Wait, she clapped.
So I dragged her back to her cabin and propped her against the window.
And around what time was this?
It was around 2.
Are we ready for closing statements? All right, prosecution, your closing statement.
May it please the court? When you make your decision today, then the defendant is guilty. He's committed heinous crimes and is admitted to them. Keep in mind that he has killed an innocent woman through his reckless and irresponsible actions. Don't forget what he's done, and don't let the people forget what you have done. Send the guilty man to jail and let your consciences rest. Ease the minds of your neighbors and take this criminal off the streets. Thank you.
Please report. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a simple case. This case does not hinge on reasonable doubt like many cases before it. In 1995, O.J. Simpson was defended by Johnny Cochran and Robert Shapiro in the case Orenthal James Simpson versus the people of the state of California. O.J. Simpson's lawyers used the catchy phrase, "If the glove doesn't fit, you must acquit." They were trying to instill reasonable doubt in the minds of the jury. I don't need reasonable doubt today. This case is about facts, plain and simple. The fact is that Mary Haddad died of a heart attack, not of a gunshot. The fact is that her husband, Theo Haddad, claimed a $3.5 million life insurance policy on her, giving him more than enough reason about his bathroom breaks. The fact is, Derek Robinson is a good kid, and he doesn't deserve to go to jail, and you know it. So right now, you're going to go out in that hallway, you're going to deliberate, you're going to come back and roll not guilty. That, too, is a fact.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, it is my duty as judge to instruct you in the law that applies to this case. It is your duty as jurors to follow these instructions and apply the rules of law to facts as you find them from the evidence. The evidence which you are to consider in this case consists of testimony of the witnesses, the exhibits, and any facts admitted or agreed to by the counsel. Statements, arguments, and opinions of the counsel are not evidence in the case. However, if the attorney stipulates to the existence of a fact, you must accept the stipulation as evidence and regard that fact as proved. You must disregard any evidence to which an objection was sustained by the court, and any evidence or stricken by the court. Anything you may have seen or heard outside the courtroom is not evidence and must also be disregarded. You must decide all questions of fact in this case from the evidence received in this trial and not from any other source. You must not make any independent investigation of the facts or the law. Although you are to consider only the evidence in the case in reaching a verdict, you must bring to the consideration of the evidence your everyday common sense and judgment is reasonable and relevant. Thus, you are not limited solely to what you see and hear as the witnesses testify. You may draw a reasonable emphasis from the evidence in which you feel are justified in the light of common experience, keeping in mind that such inferences should not be based on speculation or guess. A verdict cannot be influenced by sympathy, prejudice, or public opinion. Your decision should be the product of sincere judgment and sound discretion in accordance with these rules of law.
Any special instructions for the jury?
No.
Please remind them they have 3 charges they're considering today. Do you know what the 3 charges are? Prosecution? What are the 3 charges?
There are 4 charges, I believe.
Oh, okay, what are they?
Manslaughter, firing near a train track, vandalism,